Hi there, guys. It's been a week and a half since I posted a daily devotional. So today is about fear, and I'm going to go into depth as to why I'm talking about fear, but I want to read to you a couple different passages from the book I Come as a Brother. When you feel fear, you feel it as a physical thing, which is what it is. Many times it is a constriction of the chest, throat, or head. Instead of following whatever unsuccessful ritual you usually try something else. I would suggest the following. First, allow the movement of that fear to play upon the physical form in any way it wishes. Don't try to remove it, turn it, swallow it, or get away from it. Be in a totally receptive state and allow it to move. Allowance is the first step. If you pay attention, you will see it comes in waves. Fear is not an ongoing power because it's not divinely motivated. And be grateful that this is so, for now you know there is a way to end your difficulty. So first, allow the fear to play within you. Second, when you feel the troughs between the waves of fear, very carefully you can stay centered and do not say, I am afraid. Say, fear is present. You cannot call upon the peace if you have not practiced it. You cannot call upon the universal love if you have not wished for it. It does not only come on your command, it comes when you build the power daily. And then this is about 2 pages later. Instead of solving the problem of fear let's see. This has to do with relationships and fear-based relationships and how they affect you and your responses to them. But instead of solving them and being grateful, you say, I must have another problem. You may find another problem. If it is not real, you will create one. If it is not banging upon your door, you will go out and borrow someone else's. You keep telling each other you are filled with problems. You base communication and relationships on solving each other's problems. You may continue to hold that point of view, but understand that it is not going to free you. I will challenge you to try living in the next month believing you have no problems. Watch the resistance and your ego goes up. Watch the power of desire to solve either your own problems or someone else's. And realize that as long as you are dedicated to problem solving, you will never rise above it. This is why there are so many seekers and so few finders. So, the reason I wanted to talk about fear is I've been off and on sick for 2 weeks, and it's a virus that's going around, so I'm not entirely certain if it's the flu or just this gut bug that's going around, but every time I think that I'm past it, I fall back down. So, and the weather's been crazy, and goodness gracious, I love where I live, but I picked the place where the weather goes up and down, barometric pressure changes so fast in a 24-hour period of time, and in a 3-day period of time, I can go from high to low to high to low to high to low. So good gracious, I'm having some time. So it's hard to stay positive when, and I'm going to address that statement right there, when it feels like everything's coming at you. I have had a couple bouts of depression in my life that have been fundamentally life-changing. And I don't look at my chronic illness as I suffer from a chronic illness. I try to look at it as I battle a chronic illness. I seek to overcome. I don't want it to drag me down and keep me low. I don't want to be afraid all of the time. And for the most part, I think I do okay. It's an easy trap to fall into, the negativity trap of everybody's out to get me, nobody likes me, I'm going to go eat worms. So, being positive doesn't mean I don't allow any negativity at all. It just means that I accept that when my moods get a little low or when I'm struggling with something, I accept that. And when we talk about all those varying emotions, I go back to a phrase I've used for years and years and years. Years and years and years, teaching. There are two emotions, love and fear. And when you're in that negative place, you're in fear. And I learned a long time ago, and I will completely admit that I am not always good at it, but I know that I fight to maintain this, that fear comes out in different ways. It comes out in pride, not being able to admit you've misspoken, or I am notoriously guilty of this one. I have full intentions to do something, so I say I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then my life gets in the way, or I make a poor choice, or financially I can't do B and D and E and F. And my fear is the pride of seeming weak or seeming insincere. And so I don't fix it. And I just pretend like it never happened. We all have poor coping mechanisms with different aspects of the fear in our lives. And I have bad coping mechanisms, and I work at it all of the time because I know where they come from. I know where the fear is. I know where the fear comes from. I know where the self-reflection is. And instead of allowing that fear to be present and recognizing that that is the fear and that it's okay to acknowledge the fear, I get caught in the trap just like everybody else does, where I don't want to talk about it. Fear, depression is driven by chemicals. It's driven by a lot of things physically, but it can also be driven by the combination of those physical things with fear. I have a chronic illness. I've had a chronic illness since I was a small child. We called it by 100 different names as I grew up. I now know it's biotoxin. I now know, looking back, years and years and years and years, I've had biotoxin. If you look at the history of biotoxin, you look at the symptoms, it's like somebody was following me around with a book. One of Dr. Shoemaker's books where he has all the case definitions, there's a couple different ones in there that when I read them, I was like, oh my God, this woman is talking about me. Because biotoxin does that. And I refuse to allow chronic illness to drive the fears in my life. And the spiritual journey that's been in my life, that's been easy in so many ways, where the physical aspect has been very difficult for me. So I've had people, not very often, but occasionally somebody will say, wow, how do you know all these things? How do you perceive these things? Why do you have seemingly the right answer? Because my life has been a combination of lessons physically and spiritually that have honed those skills. But it doesn't mean I'm perfect, and it doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. Oh my goodness, have I made some whopper mistakes? And I don't talk about it a lot because spiritual devotion, daily devotions, are supposed to help me and you lift ourselves up and be positive and think of ways to travel and journey through our lives for the better. And I try to use a fairly neutral spiritual foundation so that we all can understand the language that we're speaking to lift each other up. But know this: I am not perfect. I don't have all the answers. And I have made some whopper mistakes in my life. And I will probably make more. I don't pretend to sit on top of the cake and preach down at anyone. I share my journey and I share these daily devotions to help you, because we need to help each other. And for some reason, I'm brave enough to put my face out there and do it. But something that goes with fear is the self-destruction that we cause ourselves from that fear. We get mired down in that self-destructive loop. And if you struggle from depression, or you have chronic illness, or you have addictive behavior tendencies, or you have bipolar, or, I mean, I'm listing a few, but there are hundreds of different cases. It's important to know that looking at it as, instead of suffering from something, suffering from depression, suffering from bipolar, suffering from chronic illness, suffering from diabetes, suffering from all these things, instead of looking at it as suffering from, change the language. I am conquering. I am overcoming. I am working through. I am accepting and developing and morphing and becoming all of who I'm meant to be. I have a chronic illness. I know that I have a chronic illness. It's not something, there's no magic pill. There's no magic diet. There's no magic any one thing that I can do that's going to make it all go away. And I'm going to have wonderful days, and I'm going to have really sucky ones. And I've had a series of really sucky ones lately. I thought I was going to try. I was trying to do this without crying. And today's a really hard day. But I know that I choose not to suffer from these things. I choose to overcome them. And even on bad days like today, the grief is very heavy on me today, and the sadness and the fear, it's very heavy today, and I know that. But I also know that I'm not suffering. I am working through it. I am looking to achieve awareness to overcome it, so maybe the next wave isn't so deep. Or maybe I'm not seeing the lesson, so I strive to look at things from several different perspectives. If you only look at things in black and white, and you only look at things from one perspective, you cannot grow. And these things that drive the fear are opportunities for growth. I'm not saying it's easy. Hell no, it's not easy. But you can do it, and we can all do it together. We're not alone. Fear of being alone is a very big driving force in depression and in chronic illness. Fear of being alone, that you're the only one going through it, that nobody's been through it, that you're the only one that's experiencing these things, that you're the only one struggling with it, is very common. And it's also very difficult for those who don't have these issues to empathize, to sympathize, to understand. And it doesn't mean they don't want to. It just means they don't have a frame of reference. But that doesn't mean that they don't want to be there for you and can't love you and can't stand with you. So never fear alone, because you're never really alone. Even when you're alone, you're never really alone. All you have to do is say something, and there's somebody there that will listen, hold your hand, answer the phone at 2 a.m., etc. Okay? And I say this from a deep, abiding place of understanding, because in 2001, 2002, it was right over that time period, I came very close to killing myself. I was very suicidal. I didn't, but I almost did. Came really close. And in 2012, I did try to kill myself. It's the only time I've ever done that. But I can tell you that I never want to go back to that place again. And it's not something I talk about. but it's something that I am not ashamed of. I was ashamed of it for a long time, but I'm no longer ashamed of it because I recognize where I was at the time and how far I've come. We are each a blessing, and we're meant to be here for a reason. We just have to find that peace on a daily basis so that we can shine. And when we start to shine, we will find our place. So my hair is in complete disarray. I'm sitting here in my jammies, and I'm doing daily devotional with you. And we're talking about fear, because fear is a big deal. It drives so many of our decisions, for good and for bad. I would prefer if I could say love was the driving force. Love is a driving force in many things, but fear drives us often to make desperate decisions that we would not normally do. I know that fear is something that we can overcome by accepting that it is part of the polarity in our lives, love and fear, and that we are not alone. So I've cried some tears, and it's a really long daily devotional, and I apologize, but I don't talk about my experience with fear as much because I try to keep these daily devotions light. But in contemplation, I thought recently it might be important for you to understand where I've been. I've had a couple low points in my life. You know, as a teenager, I had a rough couple teen years. Oh my goodness, were they bad? I had a really rough time in 2001, 2002. It was probably the most scary time, minus 2012. It was truly terrifying. 2006 was bad, but it wasn't as bad as 2001, 2002. It was over that December, January period, so it was really bad. And it had been building since November of that year, so. But 2012 was probably the worst. And I really am grateful that even though a lot of people didn't know what was going on, they knew I was struggling. And I am grateful for the people who stood by and stood strong and recognized that this was something not right, that it wasn't something I would normally do. It's not something that is a normal behavior for me. So fear can drive really bizarre behaviors, and just know that, and know that you're not alone. And I'm looking for the calendar history for the day. February 9th. In northern Norway, a pageant is held annually on this date to honor the ancient pagan goddess who rules over the sun. This festival, which has been celebrated since pre-Christian times, begins at sunrise and continues throughout the day until the shadows of the evening darken the sky. Narvik Sun Pageant. So celebrate the sun today, beautiful people. And this is kind of a long and in-depth devotion on fear, but the theme is fear, but the theme is not wallowing in fear, but instead accepting the fear and what the lesson brings, and love yourself. Love yourself because you are loved. And I hope you have a beautiful day. And I'll see you again when I post next. And hopefully next week I'll be past all this crud that's going around, and I'll be back to daily devotions on a daily basis. Have a beautiful day.